My name is James Breeden. I'm 39 years old and I'm a photojournalist. We've just moved here from Dallas, Texas in the United States, and we moved to Xerta at the very end of last year. But I did live in Xerta as a child for about 2 years, from 9 to about 11 years old. So I have amazing memories of living in Xerta and growing up around this area, and I always wanted to move back. Ever since we left, I always wanted to return. I always knew I would return one day, and I really wanted to come back now. I have 2 young children and I wanted them to experience life here in Catalonia so that they can have what I had as a child. I always, having lived in another country as a child, I always knew that I wanted a career where I would be able to travel, that would take me to different places, different cultures. And it was actually one of my best friend's dads growing up was a photographer, and I always just thought it was the coolest job. So I knew from quite a young age that that's what I wanted to do. So when I got to the age, I studied photography and was very lucky that that's what I've done for my career ever since. So my first job as a photographer was working at the local newspaper in Plymouth. So my first ever foreign trip was to cover the VE Day celebrations in Paris. I just couldn't believe my luck that they sent me. I was one of the most junior photographers, and the next day I'm in Paris under the Arc de Triomphe, photographing the then French president, Jacques Chirac. It felt amazing, and that was the moment when I knew I had to do this for the rest of my life. And then after that, they sent me to Iraq. I was one of the youngest photojournalists to go, embedded with the British Army. And the idea behind that was that at that time, most of the soldiers that were being sent to Iraq were the same age as me, so they could have sent far more experienced, far better photographers than I was then, but they decided to send me because they felt like I would be able to relate to the troops more because I was the same age. And that was a life-changing trip for me because it was a very short period of time that I was over there, but it really opened my eyes to the world. And it also provided the opportunity for me to go to America because I had a huge article in a photography magazine after I came back from Iraq with my work from Iraq. And it was that article that the then boss of an agency in Los Angeles spotted when he was visiting London. And I had an email out of the blue asking if I'd ever thought about moving to LA. And I was just a young kid living in a small city in England. I'd never thought twice about moving to LA. So I flew over there and checked it all out. And I actually said no. I actually said I wasn't interested in the job because I didn't want to leave family. I kind of knew what my career path was going to be. I was going to go to London. And then after a couple of months, it was raining every day in England, and I thought, do you know what, it won't be so bad. Maybe I'll go for 6 months and see how it is and just experience living in America for a while. And so I went for 6 months and I ended up staying there for 18 years. So once I was in the United States, I started covering a lot of stories internationally. I worked all throughout North America, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, and sometimes even Asia. So I did work on some stories that were particularly impactful. I would say the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 is probably the story that's had the biggest impact on me because it was just the most awful scene you can imagine. I mean, it really was. There's a lot of images that I made on that trip that I can't even look at today because they're just so awful. And it was frustrating because you could see that the world was coming together to provide aid, and then the reality on the ground wasn't matching what the world was talking about in terms of the aid response, because it was just so difficult at that time to get the aid out. So it was very frustrating being there, seeing these people in desperate need, and the help that the world was supposedly sending and were sending wasn't reaching the people who needed it the most because of the lack of coordination on the ground, and it was very tough. That's probably what affects me the most now, is any stories now that I am a parent, you know, any stories that involve children are particularly tough. So unfortunately, you know, one of the worst parts of living in the US and being in the career that I'm in, I've had to cover the aftermath of school shootings in the US a lot, you know, way more times than anybody should have to. And it is especially tough now, and it's not a job I really want to undertake anymore. I can't pick a worse one because they're all obviously equally horrific, but the school shooting that happened in Texas, in Uvalde, I happened to be only about an hour away from Uvalde when that happened, so I got there very quickly, and they'd set up like a family crisis center where families could gather and basically find out if their child had been killed or not. And the screams that I heard from parents inside that building, as the media, we weren't allowed in, and we wouldn't want to be in there, you know. But you know, the sounds I heard from that, I just can't ever, I don't want to ever hear that again. Back in the US, I moved from LA. I was in LA for about 4 years, and then we moved to Texas. So I ended up in Texas for about 14 years, and based in Texas, the bulk of my work then became, for the last 10 years, the majority of my work has been on the southern US border, so migration from mostly Central and South America, but really from all over the world, people arriving at the US's southern border. It's a hugely political subject in the United States, and so that became the main focus of my work over the last 10 years or so. In terms of the question of should be taking pictures of what is quite often the very worst moments in people's lives, then I do think, and I believe strongly, that we have to bear witness, as difficult as it can be for both us and the subject. The world needs to know what's happening, and that's the only way that I can reconcile what I have to do sometimes, is the importance of the image and the importance of showing people and informing people of what's going on in a given situation. There have been many occasions where my work has had a genuinely positive effect, and so you kind of live for those small victories, and that's why I will keep doing this work, because I do think there are always going to be important stories that need to be told.